What's up, guys? So in this video I did some experimenting to try to increase the idle speed of my 2015 Pioneer 500 to improve performance in deep water. A lot of times when you're trying to switch seats with somebody or slide around or push the roll cage over, your foot slips off the gas and it can cause it to stall. Happens to a lot of my friends with Pioneer 500s, and then water can go in the exhaust and ruin your day. So what I ended up doing was just manually adjusting the butterfly open. There's actually a little setter I'll show you on the side of the throttle body. But I did try some stuff playing with the resistance values of the O2 sensor and the air intake temperature sensor to trick the computer. That didn't work, but I basically hooked up a resistor bank, and if you're interested in that, that's at the very end of the video if you want to try something similar. But yeah, I also went out and tested it, obviously, because, I love testing, and put it neck deep, and it idled just fine. I was able to shift forward, reverse, neutral. Yeah, so I think I might have solved it by just cranking up the idle manually. Very simple solution. Okay, so I'm trying to find a clever way to bump up the idle on my Pioneer 500 when I go deep. There is not a great way to do it because it has an idler control valve that's trying to keep it, I don't know, around 1400 RPMs. And that's just barely enough for it to idle underwater with this big goofy exhaust system it has with a catalytic converter and all kinds of other BS, right? So I wanted to raise the idle some. Ideally, I want to switch. I could flip as like a high idle switch. That's not going to be super easy to do. I tried modifying, I don't know where it went. Tried modifying the air box air intake temperature sensor. That's why the air box is out. But I'll show you some more about what I was attempting to do there. It wasn't really fruitful. Did not get a big increase in idle by trying to make the motor think that the air box temperatures were a lot lower than they are. And so this resistor bank is doing. But I did find on the Pioneer 500, you can pop the throttle body off, and there's an adjustment right there with that nut and bolt. So what I did was I took my idle up from 1400 to 1700 RPMs, about as high as you can go before it starts to engage the centrifugal clutch and try to drive away from you. I use this little tiny tack eBay thing, tack hour meter, made in China. It just wraps around your plug wire and it tells you how many RPMs you're turning. Pretty simple. I use that to tune it, but what you could also do is just go down here with an Allen key in gear very carefully and tighten that bolt until it starts to engage the clutch and drive away, and then you could just back it off a quarter, half a turn, and you could set it like that. So that's an easy trick to make a Pioneer 500 idle underwater better. It's just manually increase the idle speed. Eventually I'd like to make this where I have a switch to do it by either kind of controlling the idle air control valve or tricking one of the sensors. But it doesn't look like I'm gonna be able to do that simply by messing with the air intake temperature sensor. The computer just doesn't care enough about that resistance value. It doesn't really bump the idle up, just changes the fuel mixture slightly, and it doesn't seem like that's gonna be enough to give us the underwater idle speed. Okay, so I just manually turned my idle up to 1800, and you can see it trying to lurch forward around 1900. All right, it's time to test my waterproofing on this Pioneer 500. What I've done is obviously snorkel it, and also I've turned the idle up. So you can hear it's idling a little high. It's about 1650, 1700 RPMs. So we're gonna see if that gets her to idle underwater, and we're gonna see how good my snorkel job is. I should have probably done this before Holopaw, but I was busy, so yeah. Of course, the parking brake already doesn't work. The little latches in here are terrible. All right, so we're backing into the water in neutral. Idling nice and high. I left the bed off, obviously, to be able to see everything. All right, exhaust is under, just barely. All right, now we're in gear, idling. Water's a little cold. Not very sunny out today. Okay, we got the exhaust under and some of the air box. Air box is pretty high on this thing. All right, so there's the whole air box under. Let's go a little deeper. All right, so whole air box is under big time. Exhaust is under, way under. And I'm letting it totally idle right now. That's pretty good. Oh, that's deep. Oh no, water's gonna get in my glove box. Oh shit. It's trying to tip over on me, having to lean. Excellent, excellent. I guess we'll have to see how far we can go down this way. Yeah, guys, testing is key. Yeah, she almost flipped over on me right there. That was a little scary. This thing's so small though, it's like an ATV. Like where you sit in the seat actually matters. It's very easy to lean it. I wonder if I could climb out up here. That'd be kind of cool, right? Let's try it. Oh yeah. All right, I am belly button deep. Will it ever start to level out? No, it's not really leveling out. All right, let's see if we can get the headrest to touch the water. Ah, excellent. The headrest is in the water. Well, I think that's a pretty good snorkel test depth. Documentation station. And it's idling, guys. Let's see if it'll drive out. Headrest deep and idling. Oh, it's a little high centered. There we go. Come on, find the grip. Yeah, it needs a torque locker. Alright, so that was pretty successful, I think. Oh, it's still kind of dirty. I'll have to go through a few more times. Anyway, let's check this drain down here. Oh, it did get a little bit of water in it. So, you know, it was about maybe 2 or 3 inches of the hose full. So I do have a small leak somewhere. It's probably the airbox lid. This model doesn't have the little springies in the center, and the gasket in there's old. So I'm going to put a fresh gasket in the airbox lid, as well as some dielectric grease, and that'll probably get that sorted. I don't see where anything else in this pipe could be leaking. Throttle body's on there good. Crankcase breather's on there good. Always check your crankcase breather before going deep, by the way. The Rosers, they're after me. All right, make a few more laps through there, try to get it a little cleaner. Yeah, so I do have a small airbox leak, but honestly, that small leak is better than having this situation where you can't take your airbox lid off. That's the absolute worst. So I'd rather deal with a little leak like that. You know, check your airbox every time you go stupid deep. Airbox machine is fairly high, so it's not like it's going to be underwater all day long. Psych. Yes, it will. Okay. You know, my snorkel just goes all the way to the roll cage, so I really just want to test that for science, obviously. Oh, okay. So, yeah. Let's see. I'm beyond nipple deep. Okay. We're approaching neck deep. The headrest is halfway under. I don't want to go too far because when I throttle back, it's going to dig in a little bit and sink down. So we don't want to go right to the top of the snorkel. All right, I got snorkel about 6 inches out of the water. Headrest is almost totally under. I am neck deep. Now in neutral, make sure to idle. Idling great, neck deep, very well. First gear. also called low in this thing. Oh yeah. Now she's nice and clean. All right, so I came home and inspected the airbox lid gasket. It was totally compressed. You know, it's 10 years old at this point. That's the OEM gasket. It works okay until it gets old and compressed. That's definitely where my leak was. So I replaced it with this. This is a lot thicker. As you can see, this is off a Honda Talon. It's a big foam gasket. You have to cut it because it's too long. I just pressed it in around there, right? And then there's a little gap where I had to cut it right there. So I'm just gonna put a dab of Ultra Black in there in that one little spot. I'll still get the lid on and off, and it'll be 100% sealed with this nice fatter gasket. And yeah, it's a pretty good upgrade. This is a used one off of a Talon or a Pioneer 1000. They're just really long, so you have to cut them. But it's a much better gasket because on the Talon and the Pioneer 1000, this gasket actually seals the clean side of the airbox and the dirty side. So Honda had to put a better gasket. So it's a pretty good upgrade. It's a little harder work in there. Use a big flat blade screwdriver, went around, pushed it into the groove. Now that's gonna be a done deal. Let me show you where the leak was. You pull off the airbox, there's a little puddle of water right there. That is a great way to tell that it's coming past the gasket. That's the only way the water would really get there. Otherwise it'd be in the back where the drain is. So yeah, figured out the little leak. We'll have to go test it again when I get a chance, but I think it's gonna be 100%. I think a few of you guys might find this experiment interesting. So I'm messing with changing the resistance value coming from the air intake temperature sensor to try to trick the machine into running better underwater. So far I haven't yielded anything interesting. I'm just showing you my setup. So this is the air intake temperature sensor. It sits in the airbox. Same thing a Rubicon has or Rancher or whatever. So I took it and I cut the connector off the wire harness and I connected the two wires to this resistor bank. So if you measure the resistance of this at like ambient, it's about 2,000 ohms. And once it starts to heat up, you hold it in your hand, you can watch the resistance drop. And it'll drop down to about 1,000 ohms if you hold it in your hand for a while, which makes sense, right? Resistivity goes down, temperature goes up. And that's all the computer's looking at is the resistance across these two pins to see how cold the air is. And ideally that adjusts the tune, right? It changes the mixture. So I'm wondering if we can use this to run underwater better. So obviously I've got to repeat this test underwater, with the exhaust under, but here's what it looks like right now. So right now this is 1,000 times 1, so I have this set at 1,000 ohms, which is about, you know, warm air. Start this baby up. This tells me my RPM. It's just wrapped around the plug wire. And I can turn this knob, and if I make it to 2,000 ohms, that would simulate very cold air. And it does change the sound of the engine slightly. RPMs don't change much. I know it's working, so I go to 0 ohms. It'll throw the check engine light right there. There it is. This isn't doing it. So we're idling about 1,400 RPMs. I can go all the way up to 3,000 ohms, which makes it think the air is a lot colder, and it's still 1,400, 1,410, 1,420. It makes a very slight difference, but it's not enough to help.